You're grinding away at a solid job, pulling in $70,000 a year. That's above the national median, right? You've got a degree. Maybe even a side hustle. You're doing everything by the book. But then, you sit down. You open a mortgage calculator. You type in the numbers for a modest 3-bedroom home in your hometown. And the screen spits back a big, fat nope. Why? Because in 2025, that salary, which sounds decent on paper, barely covers rent in many cities. Let alone a down payment on a home that's now skyrocketed past $400,000 on average. And here's where it gets worse. According to data from the U.S. Census Bureau, to afford a typical American home today, without being house poor, you'd need an income closer to $120,000 a year. Just to keep housing costs under that so-called safe 30% of your paycheck. Let that sink in. And for millennials and Gen Z, this isn't just bad luck. It's not avocado toast. It's not poor budgeting. It's a systemic breakdown of the American dream, where owning a home feels less like a goal, and more like a relic from your parents' era. Stick around. Because we're about to unpack why interest rates refuse to budge, how zoning laws are choking housing supply, and why political gridlock is quietly hitting your wallet harder than inflation ever did. Let's set the stage. The American dream used to mean a starter home. That cozy fixer-upper where you build equity, gain stability, and eventually trade up. But today, those entry-level homes are disappearing. Why? It comes down to a toxic combination of high interest rates and restrictive zoning laws that turn new housing into a bureaucratic maze. On the monetary side, the Fed, still haunted by post-pandemic inflation and supply chain shocks, has been extremely cautious. As of December 2025, the federal funds rate sits between 3.50% and 3.75%. With officials signaling just one additional rate cut in 2026, far slower than what financial markets originally priced in. Their logic? The economy looks too strong to rescue housing. GDP growth continues to outpace forecasts. Job numbers remain resilient. So why risk overheating the economy? The result is brutal. Mortgage rates hovering around 6.3%, effectively locking out first-time buyers who can't absorb a $2,500 monthly payment on a median-priced home. Politically, the picture is no better. Republicans argue the solution lies in cutting regulations, pointing to zoning rules like minimum lot sizes that inflate housing costs by as much as 14%, according to urban economics research. They champion ideas similar to President Trump's proposals to slash red tape and open federal land for residential development. Democrats, meanwhile, emphasize demand-side relief. First-time buyer subsidies, expanded tax credits, and legislation like the ROAD to Housing Act. But Congress remains gridlocked. And that gridlock has consequences. It leaves people like you saving for a down payment while rent consumes 40% of your income, stuck in the middle. This isn't abstract policy debate. This is why your vision of a backyard barbecue, a dog, and a fixed-rate mortgage keeps getting pushed further into the future. Now, let's get into the numbers, the ones that don't just live on charts, but hit your wallet hardest. Over the last 20 years, median home prices have surged from about $200,000 in 2005 to $416,900 in 2025. That's a staggering 108% increase. During that same period, median household income has climbed from $46,000 to $83,150. Roughly 80% growth. That gap matters a lot. And it's exactly why a $70,000 salary today feels like poverty when you're house hunting. Back in the 1980s, the typical home cost about 3.5 times annual income. Today, that ratio sits closer to 5 times income. And it's even higher in major metro areas. Visual Capitalist's long-term charts make this painfully clear. The affordability gap explodes after the 2008 financial crisis, when homebuilders, burned by the crash, pivoted hard toward higher-margin luxury homes. The result? Starter homes, typically priced under $250,000, have become effectively extinct in many American markets. Now look at affordability by decade. The Housing Affordability Index plunged from around 180 in the 2010s to below 100 in 2022. Translation? Homes today are less than half as affordable as they were just a decade ago. And the pain isn't evenly spread. In swing states like Pennsylvania and Arizona, Zillow heat maps light up deep red. Median home prices in key battleground metros now exceed $350,000, with some areas seeing 20% year-over-year jumps. For everyday consumers, this forces brutal trade-offs. Picture a couple in their 30s, both working full-time, doing everything right, and still renting, because a 20% down payment would wipe out their entire savings. The ripple effects go further. Small businesses feel the squeeze too. High housing costs push workers to demand higher wages just to survive, putting intense pressure on mom-and-pop shops operating in expensive cities. And the stock market isn't immune. Real estate ETFs like V&Q have shown sharp volatility, dipping when rates rise. So why does this matter to your wallet? Take Sarah from Atlanta. She earns $75,000 a year as a public school teacher. Despite stable income and good credit, she can't qualify for a $300,000 mortgage without dipping into retirement savings. Largely because local zoning laws ban affordable multifamily housing in her suburb. Multiply Sarah's story by millions of Americans, and a clear pattern emerges. Wealth inequality widens. Your parents built equity in the 1990s. And you? You're stuck building someone else's wealth, one rent check at a time. To keep things balanced, let's look at the other side, because this debate? It isn't just black and white. Some economists argue the Federal Reserve's caution is actually the responsible move. They warn that cutting rates too quickly could reignite inflation, driving up prices on everything from groceries to gas, ultimately eroding your purchasing power, even more than high mortgage rates already do. From that perspective, higher rates are the lesser evil. On zoning, defenders of the current system make their case as well. They argue zoning laws exist to protect neighborhoods from overdevelopment, preserving green spaces, controlling traffic congestion, and, crucially, maintaining property values for existing homeowners who've already invested their life savings into a house. Politically, there are signs of common ground. Bipartisanship does exist on paper. Bills like the ROAD to Housing Act show Democrats and Republicans agreeing, at least in principle, on tying federal infrastructure and transportation funding to zoning reforms that encourage more housing supply. And zooming out even further, supporters of the status quo point to the macro picture. In a strong economy with low unemployment, rising home prices can be framed as a sign of prosperity, not a crisis. After all, higher real estate values can lift household net worth, stabilize local tax bases, and even boost retirement accounts. Your 401k may benefit indirectly from real estate and construction sector gains. These arguments aren't frivolous. They have merit. But here's what they consistently overlook: the generational squeeze. Because if young families can't enter the housing market at all, not even at the bottom rung, then long-term economic mobility doesn't just slow down. It stalls. And a system where wealth can only be preserved, but no longer built by the next generation, isn't stability. It's stagnation. So, how do we actually fix this? It's going to take more than just tweaking interest rates. It requires a total rethink of how we build. We're seeing a rise in 3D printed homes and modular construction, technologies that can slash building times by half and costs by 30%. Or look at international models. Singapore managed to house 90% of its population through a massive social housing program, funded by a mandatory savings fund. While the US is different, the idea of public-private partnerships building high-quality, mixed-income housing is finally gaining traction in states like California and Colorado. Then, there's the policy side. Taxing corporate landlords and vacant properties to discourage investors from treated homes like speculative stock certificates. But while we wait for the system to evolve, you still need a personal survival strategy. This means playing defense with your wallet. Look into house hacking, renting out a room to cover your mortgage. Explore FHA loans with as little as 3.5% down. And don't dismiss CO buying. Pooling resources with family or friends is becoming the new norm for those under 40 to break into the market. These aren't just tips, they're necessary adaptations. The American dream isn't dead, but the old version of it? It's being replaced. Whether we build our way out or tax our way out, change is coming. If you want to stay ahead of the curve, hit that subscribe button. Like the video if you learned something today. And tell me in the comments, would you buy a 3D printed home to save $50,000? Let's keep talking. Because your wallet and your future depend on it.